Matter of urgent public importance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Browning.
So, Mr. Speaker, this would be an urgent debate on the first occasion after an event has taken place. The event has not taken place. The Prime Minister has indicated an intention but has not resigned.
The announcement has taken place, and that's the matter that is important here. The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, being the Prime Minister of a country is an achievement, and holding that position for 8 years is a significant feat. So let's begin this debate by remembering that and thanking the Prime Minister for his service to the country. We wish him and his family well. Now, whenever a Prime Minister leaves the stage, we glance back to consider what has been achieved. Now, he has been rated by the media as one of our most popular Prime Ministers. There's no doubt that he had that Teflon factor, which many of his peers very soon will be coming to envy. However, no matter what side of the political spectrum one comes from, many ordinary New Zealanders have been able to relate to him. From the State House in Brindua to the 9th floor of the Beehive is something John Key aspired to from the day when he was a young boy, and he can be proud of that. As a politician, he became an astute pragmatist, plotting his moves with his eyes fixed firmly on the polls, which the National Party take every 3 days. The question which, as time passes, people will ponder is, so what really is his legacy? Is New Zealand in as good shape as he told us yesterday, or is the reality something very different? Well, take housing. What's been the legacy on housing? 8 years ago, he campaigned on a 4-point plan to solve what he called the, quotes, housing affordability crisis, inner quotes. He talked of, quotes, the enormity of the problem, inner quotes, and the second worst affordability housing problem in the whole wide world. He said in 2007 the housing crisis had got worse and that the crisis would only deepen. And in 2007 he promised to deliver as PM and build more houses. He got his chance, became Prime Minister, and had 8 years to fix it. So what is the record? 8 years later, the housing crisis has seriously worsened. A recent report said that 1 in 7 houses in Auckland are being bought by speculators who already own 5 or more properties. In most cases, they have taken these homes at the expense of Kiwis looking for their first home. In spite of all the denials from the National Party, the massive flood of immigration into Auckland and offshore buying have shut out New Zealanders and sent the price of housing straight into orbit. The average price for a house in Auckland went beyond $1 million. Now, there have been some corrections later, but the reality has not changed. A generation of New Zealanders is growing up who will never, ever own their own home. For them, the Kiwi dream of home ownership has been shattered. They face the dreary prospect of being rentals for life. Now that is the housing legacy. And on state houses, well, with 40,000 homeless, families living in cars and pensioners scraping by in campgrounds, the government started selling off thousands of state houses. The latest sell-off will be 2,500 state houses in Christchurch. Right now, going on while we've got massive homelessness in this country. Now, the same city where a Prime Minister grew up in a state house has got 2,500 being sold. Rather than selling, the government should be keeping state houses, upgrading them and building more. But they're not. Again, that's their state housing legacy. And on poverty, over the last 8 years, poverty has become more entrenched, more apparent, with family poverty frequently wrongly described as child poverty as some sort of diversion. It's families that are poor in this country, not children, it's families. And under Mr. Key's leadership, poverty has become more entrenched. And when those people say, be generous, he's retiring, I want them to look at that homelessness, those people out of work, in despair, no chance in this country's future, in poor families, and ask what would they think. We now have 220,000 New Zealand children, or 21% of those under the age of 17, living in poverty. At Totoro Primary School in Kaikoai, the number being fed by the school has doubled in the last 4 years, from 50 to 20 to now up to 45 pupils out of a total roll of 75, and Totoro School is not unique in this country. Again, that's another part of the legacy for those who care about a balanced, fair assessment. On youth unemployment, there are 75,000 young New Zealanders who are not in employment, education or training. 75,000. You want to talk about a legacy? This is what the next election is going to be about. And if you want to believe shonky, puffery polls, you go and believe in them. But that's what the next election is going to be about. 75,000, a ticking time bomb which in the last 8 years has never been addressed. To make matters worse, hundreds of thousands of immigrants have been allowed into this country, many of them on student visas who are entitled to work. It's driven down wages, seen some appalling abuse of work conditions, illegal hours, under minimum wage payments, wide-scale corruption of export education, and 20-hour work visas offended all the time. All of this has made it difficult for young New Zealanders to find jobs. Beg your pardon? Beg your pardon? Well, I'm telling what I really think, Mr. Brownlee, because unlike you, some of us people in this country are concerned, not you, Mr. Speaker, are concerned to do something about it. Not get our snout in the trough, not get our 4 feet and snout in the trough and think that that's when life stops. No. And what we're going to do about it, is get rid of you. That's the first thing we're going to do, get rid of him. Now, Mr. Speaker, that degradation in the workforce and the absolute abandonment of fair play amongst the young coming into this country in the workforce is a disgrace, it's a legacy. And on the economy, claimed to be a rock star miracle. Well, lately a number of economists have described it as nothing like that but a mirage. For the year ended, a mirage is mainly about your lifestyle. For the year ended June 2016, New Zealand's current account deficit ran at 7.4 billion. Net international investment position, well, we owe the rest of the world a negative 163 billion. Now the GDP growth rate, they claim our GDP growth rate is 3.5%. That's bull dust, because you've got a 2% population growth, and before you start, you've got to extract that from your so-called projections. So what's your growth rate? 1.6, which is the OECD average. Stop misleading people with rubbish, and I wish some journalists got themselves a basic understanding of fundamental economics, because if you're talking about the GDP growth rate, you have to factor in your population growth. Every idiot knows that, excepting some that I can't name, because I'm too nice a person to do so. Without this adjustment for the population growth, the numbers are totally deceptive. Again, that is the real legacy. And on the other things, the flag referendum, 26 million needlessly frittered away on a referendum, a great splash of advertisements, and by the flag consideration panel going to ridiculous meetings at empty halls up and down the country. And even today, the retiring Prime Minister said he had a hope that that would be his legacy. In this case, there is a flag legacy belonging to someone else in a different age. Then the government hitched their wagon to the TPPA, railroaded the law through this parliament to welcome its arrival, and it's all crashed, as New Zealand first said it would, in February of this year. We said it in February of this year. We also said that Donald Trump was going to win So stop wasting people's money and time. No, they can't listen. Got all these experts who know a lot about everything until it comes to say, when did they get their forecast right? Millions spent on the TPA to achieve absolutely nothing. Put alongside the Korean free trade deal, heavily biased against New Zealand producers with tariffs of 176%. This is not a legacy. On the resource management legislation, they did a deal between the government and the Maori Party to push the RMA changes, and that's been an absolute disaster. National chose iwi over kiwi. His government has forced parallel, unelected, race-based control on this country. And it's planning consent laws, and as more New Zealanders learn about this, whether Maori or European, they'll come to bitterly resent this legacy, which some other government is going to have to fix up. So what's his place in history? Well, let's be fair here. He's done better than many. But this is not Sidon, Savage, and it ain't Hollyoak. Before some of these commentariat, who don't seem to remember what happened yesterday, think he's up in that league. Look at the fundamentals. There are serious storm clouds gathering. Decline in manufacturing. A decline in exports against GDP. There are millions of people in this country disillusioned. And even national supporters were beginning to think twice. At the Tohei Hall, 16 kilometres from Morrinsville, on Sunday night, we got 220 people out in a country place that's got no shop, just a school. 220. I know there's a sea change, whether they know it or not. And this sea change that you saw in the UK, you saw in the Australian early elections there, and what you saw in the United States is sweeping. Oh, yes, I did. I did. I looked around you, not easy to do, and I saw it. And I saw it. And I said so, not after the event, Mr. Brownlee, but beforehand. I mean, real signs, not chonky polls so badly exposed by Brexit. But you've got to give it to Mr. Key, a bit like Kenny Rogers. You've got to know when to hold them. You've got to know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. He saw the bells tolling. He saw those polls as we have seen them, and he decided, we'll leave it to people like Jerry. I don't want to be around, he said, when it all falls apart next year. That said, I wish Mr. Key, and so do my colleagues, well in his future, knowing with total confidence that his successor will be as worried about his legacy as New Zealand First is.